Hey, my name is Matt Holladay. Welcome to the Heirloom Surfboard Shop. I'm here today with Fiberglass, Florida, and today we're going to be polishing a board. All right, why do we polish a surfboard? Number one reason is probably aesthetics. It's also in the tradition of fine, old school longboards and fishes and guns. So being in the tradition, we like to keep it that way. I'll talk about some tools that you need to come up with a fine polish. And what we're looking for in the end is a mirror finish. You want something that a customer can see on the rack at a surf shop and it just blows their mind. So what we have is the board. The board is sanded to 1200 grit and it's been sanded bottom, top, and the rails are wet sanded, and that's why you see this funky collection of dust on the rails. So the board is all smoothed out, and what you're doing with the sandpaper is you are starting with 400 grit, going to 600, 800, 1000, and then 1200 grit. And each step progressively takes out the scratches of the last step. So the 600 removes the 400 scratches, 800 removes the 600, and so on. So you got your board here, and what I have here is I believe this is 5500 RPM polisher. I have a wool bonnet. This is what they look like when they're new. I use this brand, Buff and Shine. I get them from Fiberglass, Florida. They work perfect. So you got your buffer. Gloves are helpful. An apron is really helpful. We're going to be slinging some compound today. So as you can see, my belly takes most of it. And that's why we have the walls up today in the shop, the tarps up to keep from compound getting all over the other boards and the walls. I also like to wear ear protection because this machine is loud and I don't want to listen to it for an hour while I polish. Another tool that we need, you can get these from Fiberglass, Florida. It's a little spur, and this is how this works. It kind of gives some life back to the pad. When you're slinging compound at 5500 RPMs, these tend to get really matted down, and they don't remove scratches as well when they're all matted down. So just give it a little fluff every once in a while, and you go back into polishing the board. Now the final couple things that we need are my compound, which once again comes from Fiberglass, Florida. I just keep it in a jar. Swirl remover, and I finish with water, just ice cold water. So with that, we'll get started. All right. So I work the board in halves. So I'll work this side of the stringer, and then I'll go over the other side of the board and work that side of the stringer. And I do not load the compound onto the board. I'm not very liberal with it. I'm very conservative. The more compound that you add, the more matted your pad gets. It gets kind of wet and matted, and it's not conducive to a good polish. You just need barely enough compound just to get the board wet, and that's about it. And how I work my machine is, since this machine is so large, so heavy, and really it's dangerous to use, especially on a surfboard, especially on the rails, I only work as much as I can reach left and right and still remain safe. I don't try to reach over to this side of the board. Certainly don't try to get over on the edges. I just stay within about right here. When it's time to move, I'll take a step over and I'll overlap where my pad goes. So if my pad stopped right here, when I move to the next one, I will overlap to make sure that I'm getting a consistent polish throughout the whole board. And I run this machine. This machine isn't a variable machine, so I run it at full speed. this is how it looks. That's how one section looks. Now, I'll begin right where I left off, and I'll overlap. So I'll come back into what I've already done, just a tad. Without a doubt, you want to be extremely careful when you get to the nose and the tail. For the most part, you're going to be keeping your polisher flat, and as you get a little more comfortable, you'll be less apprehensive to go down the rail. When you get to the tip of the nose, you shouldn't pass it at all, really. It puts you on a different plane, and it gives an area for the polisher to now catch, grab the board, rip it off the racks, and throw it on the ground. So I try not to pass this plane too much. After I've polished the board, what I do is I just take nose to tail passes. Once again, don't cross that plane. Now, I will do the same thing to the opposite side of the board. Just being conservative with my compound. Not using too much. I don't want any, that's pretty wet right there. I really don't want it to look like that, so I'll take a little bit of that and I'll work it towards the nose. And that's it. Okay, let's do it. Alright, so we're moving on to the deck, and we're just going to follow the same exact procedure that we did on the bottom. Be conservative with your compound. Work it all the way down to the rail and all the way to the stringer. And that's where we stop. As I was polishing, I just thought about something. You may notice I mostly keep my pad flat, but I've known really good polishers in my day to get it up on an angle, which looks kind of like this. So you got to find the technique that works best for you. For me, a flat pad is getting the most surface area. For me, works the best. And also, when you come in at this angle, it can heat the board up a little bit faster than what I'm doing. So if you come in like this and you hold the machine, hold the trigger wide open, you could end up with a waffled spot, which is kind of a distortion of the glass if you heat it up too much. So as you're in your board building process, just kind of find your own technique. And once again, I apply my compound. Any brush will work for this. I use just a kind of a hunk of junk old brush that's been laying around here forever. Now what I do is I polish the top and the bottom. Now we go to the rails. It's another area that is very dicey. There's really some safety issues. Most importantly, primarily, grabbing the board with the 5,000 RPM wool bonnet and pulling it towards you, pulling it into the machine, slinging the board off the racks. I mean, I really want the folks at home to remember that you've worked hard on this board and now is not the time to do something silly like rush, work too fast, not pay attention. So on this step, I will fluff my wool bonnet. And I'm basically doing from right here to right there. I'm not doing much of anything else. This is also a good time to do your fin. If you have a glass on fin, this is a good time when you have the rail up. But we don't have a glass on fin, so I'm just going to very carefully work my way down this rail. You can notice how I'm getting up on the level of the surfboard. I'm not getting lazy and kind of just allowing my machine to beat me. Got to get up here and keep it nice and flat. And what you'll get is the meat of the pad just riding across the crest of the rail. At this point, I'm entering a very dangerous point of the board. Once again, with the machine turning clockwise, it can, maybe the camera can get this, it can grab this rail very easily. So if anything, I'm going to go a little extra careful on this side, and whatever I don't hit, I'll hit it from the opposite side. Once again, we have a danger area right here. So you're going to see me slow down and really take my time. I'm going to do the exact same thing. So just a little bit of compound goes a really long way on the rail, because remember, we're only polishing from here to here. So just a little drop really goes a long way. All right, here I am at a danger point, you know, a change in directions right here. We have a parallel rail coming to a perpendicular tail. So So now that we've got the board polished, we remove the pad that we use for the compound. All it is just a little nut and a backing pad. And we'll put on a newer pad to do the swirl remover. The reason is what we're trying to do is remove the last of the compound swirls. So to use the same exact pad that still has wet compound on it doesn't make any sense. So we use a brand new pad here. First thing we do is we take our nut, get all the cloth out of the way, and we really get it in there as far as it'll go with no cloth in the way. Next thing we do is we take our backing pad, slide it over the nut, just like this. Screw it down good. Give it a fluff. And looky here, it looks like a brand new wool pad. And we're ready to remove some swirls. All right, swirl remover. That is about the amount that I like to use. As you can see, I've worked all of the swirl remover into this side of the stringer, so I'm going to continue with my movements just like I was polishing with earlier. My final application is nice, fresh, ice cold water. You may wonder what this is for. Well, if the second application was our swirl remover, then this is the swirl remover remover. This really gives the board a fine finish. And you don't have to be so heavy-handed with the water. It may be difficult to see on the camera, but from what I can see in person, this makes a huge difference. Doing this stuff